For more, I'm joined by two Europe watchers, two seasoned Europe watchers. In Melbourne is Dr. Stefan Auer. He's written several books about the Eurozone. And Dr. Sav Savuri is chief economist at the London-based hedge fund Tosca Fund. Gentlemen, welcome. Sav, I'll come to you first. What do you think the likelihood of a Greek exit from the Eurozone is?
Zero.
Why is that?
Greeks are pragmatic. They're stubborn, but they're pragmatic. In referendums, two-thirds of Greeks have said that they want to remain in the Eurozone. The next election in June will become a referendum on the Eurozone, and Greeks will vote to stay in.
But all the indications are they're going to vote left.
Again, after it's stressed that June will be a de facto referendum. Spare a thought for George Papandreou, who 6 to 8 months ago suggested there should be a referendum on Greece in the Euro. He was kicked out by the Merkel-Sarkozy axis. If only Greece had been allowed to have a referendum then, we wouldn't be having this discussion now because Greeks would have voted to stay in.
But all the indications are the Greeks are going to once again vote left in the next election, and that will not be a vote to stay in the Eurozone.
To repeat, if they're given the clear idea that it's a referendum on being in or out of the Euro, right, they will vote pragmatically to stay in. Because they know that it's best to stay with the devil you know than the grotesque unknown. The unknown for Greece is unparalleled. There's no precedent for this.
We'll get into that grotesque unknown in a moment. But Stefan Auer, I'll go to you now. What do you think is the likelihood of a Greek exit from the Eurozone?
I think it is very likely indeed, so I'm much less sanguine than your previous speaker. You see, it's one thing what the Greek people want, and another thing what might happen. That's the unintended consequences. We know that 3/4 of Greeks want to stay in the Eurozone, but we also know that the vast majority is against the austerity measures that are still seen in the rest of the Eurozone as necessary for Greece to remain in the Eurozone.
And if the Greeks vote for a left government at the election, isn't that a tick for going down the path towards an exit from the Euro?
Well, that is the way I see it, but it may well be that some kind of compromise is reached between France and Germany and the other 14 members of the Eurozone that would allow for more generous conditions for Greece. But if that was to happen, then of course Spaniards and Portuguese and the Irish people would also ask for more benign conditions and more money from the EU, and I don't see where that money can come from.
Okay, Sav Savuri, we're going to this grotesque option now. What would be so grotesque for Greece going down this path of an exit?
First of all, there are no drachmas. They would have to materialise. What you'd have is an economy that becomes pastoral. Every able-bodied Greek who could leave would leave. Every infirm or retired Greek would be receiving a pension or benefits in new drachmas. Money that would not be accepted by butchers or bakers. You'd have starvation. It is no exaggeration to say that if Greece were to leave the euro, a black market in euros would develop. The civil society that Greece knows would unravel. Greek banks would be zeroed. You'd have a non-functioning banking system. Imagine this is the 21st century. You'd have a country in Europe that was effectively sent into sort of a Zimbabwe state of dysfunction. And also the consequences to Bulgaria, Macedonia, Serbia would all devalue in a tit-for-tat effort to maintain competitive. You'd have social unrest in Greece, you'd have ethnic tensions in the West Balkans. Those, like Stefan...
And social unrest
Stefan is suggesting that you can contain a Greek exit. You cannot. It will be felt far and wide. It will be felt in the UK and Australia because evacuating Greeks and their capital would look for somewhere to go, and they'd come to the Australia and the UK.
Stefan Auer, is that overstating it?
I agree that it's going to be incredibly messy, and I also fear the danger of contagion to Spain and Portugal. It's very real. I think we already are witnessing runs on banks in Greece, and that is foretaste of things to come in Spain, Portugal. You see, I advocated for Greece to exit the Eurozone 2 years ago, and hundreds of billions of money that have been wasted to keep Greece within the Eurozone could have been better employed in dealing with the post-Eurozone crisis. And mind you, Greece will never be allowed to turn into Zimbabwe. So Greeks, of course, will help, that is, Europeans will help Greeks even once they exited the Eurozone. But it will be terribly messy, I agree. There won't be starvation, though.
Stefan, if Greece left the Eurozone, it would be kicked out of the European Union. Those things go hand in hand. It can't stay in the European Union having left the Eurozone. It would become a basket case. And
we know that Germans are already planning for that scenario. We know that they are already creating provisions for assistance to Greece. Well, we do. Spiegel magazine reported that.
I'm not going to be referencing
German
journalists who are taking second and third-hand information. The Germans have made it quite clear. The Greeks will go from being the biggest risk to the euro to being its salvation, because in June they will vote in favour of parties that are pro-euro, and it will be something that should have happened 7 months ago.
I think that's wishful thinking.
Again,
I find it amazing that you present wishful thinking that European politicians have presented, for the last 2 years. It is that wishful thinking, actually, that created that unbelievably difficult situation that was bad 2 years ago, but is much worse today. And it's worse also because so much money and political capital was wasted. I mean, if politicians still had credibility today, they would have been able to allay fears of people in Spain and Portugal. But who has enough credibility to tell people in other countries within the Eurozone that they are safe? When people in Greece don't believe the politicians, it's going to be messy, I agree. But it's messy. It has been messy over the last 2 years. There have been social unrest in Greece over the last 2 years. And if Greece remains in the Eurozone, there is no prospect for growth, and there is no prospect for it to regain credible control over its destiny.
So I'll just ask you, with this election, the rerun of the election, how do you see that is going to play out then over the next month or two?
Exactly as I suggested.
I think it's completely divorced from reality to assume that the parties who have signed up to the austerity measures will prevail. That's just lunacy. There's no way that will happen.
I'm happy to reconvene post-election to take your brickbats or take your applause. I'm Greek. Okay, we are a stubborn but also a pragmatic race. Given the inevitability of knowing that the vote we cast will either see us stay in the euro or leave it, and knowing the consequences of leaving the euro, most Greeks are aware of the black hole, the vortex that leaving the euro would send them into. They won't vote for that.
What about the Greeks who are withdrawing their money from the banks now? Do you know Greeks over there now who are taking their money out of the banks?
We all do, and the fact that deposits even now exist is a manifestation of just how strange things are.
Doesn't that indicate an expectation?
Again, the contagion, Stefan, isn't to Spain that worries me, or to Portugal or Ireland. The contagion that worries me is to the neighbours around Greece's borders. Macedonians and Albanians have been working in Greece. Okay, if it wasn't for their remittances going back to Macedonia and to Serbia and to Kosovo, those countries would basically be already in ethnic unrest. So imagine a world where those workers were being paid in new drachmas. What do they remit back home?
I can't imagine the mess that will follow, and I agree with you that it's going to be incredibly messy, but it has been messy over the last 2 years. But mind you, there is one thing I want to clarify. The party that is most likely to prevail, the extreme left party, is not advocating an exit from the Eurozone. They are saying that they are committed to keep Greece within the Eurozone, but they are clearly advocating that they will not follow what has been agreed, and that is why the exit from the Eurozone will be disorderly, and it will just happen. It will not be chosen by the Greek people. It will happen to them.
You are doing a grave disservice to the Greek. We are a bright race. Okay,
I am not entering a discussion about races. People have genuine fears that are legitimate, and they will have seen what has happened to the country over the last 2-3 years, and they have their doubts, legitimate doubts about the strategy that their politicians have pursued, or European politicians pursued. I think debates about what kind of race Greeks are, with all respect, are not going to help Greece or Europe.
We might just go to one final comment from both of you. So it seems that you've basically got a faith in the intelligence of the Greek people and them to be able to see what a future would be without the euro.
Self-interest. Ultimately, Greeks will look at their own self-interest and realise that it is best served within the Eurozone, not in some bleak post-Euro, drachmarised, economy that... Do you know something? And I know if the Greeks do vote to leave the euro, effectively in June, within a year of that, there will be civil unrest in Greece, and within 2 years, a coup. That's how serious things are.
And Stefan, you are concerned that it could actually end up going down that path?
Well, I'm not saying that Greeks will vote to exit the Eurozone. I'm just saying that it is a very likely outcome of the elections. But mind you, I also see the future of Greece bleak, whether they will stay within the Eurozone or whether they will leave it, and the future for the Eurozone as such.
Okay, Sav Savuri and Stefan Auer, it's been great having you both on, and we will have you back we'll reconvene after the election for another chat. Thank you very much.